What's up, Bears fans? Harrison Graham here for a little Friday afternoon news update as we've got the Friday injury report, a couple of IR moves, roster moves to get to, so stay tuned for that. Updates on Khalil Herbert, Equanimeous, St. Brown, and others. Hit that subscribe button before we dive into all this. News, rumors, updates all year long, whether we're in the studio or at home. When news drops, we got you covered here on the channel. And remember, we are battling our Vikings YouTube channel as it is Vikings Hate Week here at Chat Sports to try and get more new subscribers this week. So help us out. Hit the subscribe button. We'll have 2 more videos tomorrow as well. All right, let's get to the roster moves here. Khalil Herbert and Equanimeous St. Brown have been placed on injured reserve. Herbert with that high ankle sprain, EQ with that hamstring, so that must be a pretty severe hamstring injury if he's going to go to injured reserve and miss at least 4 games. Herbert, obviously the more notable one, as he is the leading rusher on this Bears football team with 272 yards. I thought the last couple of games he was really running well, and obviously the way he got hurt, unfortunate, right? Justin Fields escapes from the pocket, tries to throw around a defender, kind of short arms it. Herbert tries to slide back and catch it. Ankle kind of gets caught. So one of those unfortunate deals, not anyone's fault per se, but one of those freaky things that happens. Luckily, it's not a major injury, but he is going to miss at least 4 games. EQ as well. He had that hamstring injury on a special teams play, so he is also out for at least the next 4 weeks. So you've got that going on. To fill one of those spots right now, Nathan Peterman has been signed back to the active roster, folks. Nathan Peterman, the man is inevitable. He always finds his way back onto the 53. He had been re-signed to the practice squad, but he is back on the 53, and it kind of feels like to me that there's like an unwritten promise between the Bears and Peterman of like, hey, when a roster spot opens up and we don't have someone to immediately fill it, we'll put you back on the 53 to help you out financially, even if it is short term. So you've got that going on. Obviously, I think there's value in having Peterman in the room. Clearly the Bears feel that. Does he have to be on the 53 though? Clearly the Bears think so. So that is that. I do want to go through the rest of the Bears injury report as well, because there are some notable notes here. Let me ask you this first, though, because when you look at this running back position, we'll talk about deeper here. And by the way, Roschon Johnson's out. Little teaser. He is not going to clear concussion protocol. Already been ruled out. Do you feel comfortable with Deontay Foreman and Darrygton Evans and Kari Blasingame against the Vikings? Type Y for yes. Type in for no. Let me know if you feel comfortable with that trio, led by Deontay Foreman, obviously. I think you can get by this week. I think Foreman can handle it. He was pretty passionate yesterday when talking to reporters that he's been in this situation before and has excelled. So Y for yes and for no. Are you comfortable with a trio of Deontay Foreman, Darrygton Evans, and Kari Blasingame? Okay, let's take a look at the rest of this injury report. So obviously Herbert and EQ are out. They're placed on IR. They're going to miss the next 4 weeks. Looking at my notes here. Roschon, I mentioned he's out. He's still in the concussion protocol. Travis Homer also ruled out with the hamstring injury. So 3 running backs not able to go in this one. Here's kind of a bummer. Terrell Smith, who was on the injury report earlier in the week with an ankle injury. He was limited on Wednesday, was full yesterday. So it was like, okay, he's good to go. Well, now he's ruled out with an illness. So he must have woken up with COVID or the flu or something to already rule him out. So he's not going to play in this game. Before we get to Kyler Gordon and Doug Kramer, players eligible to return from IR, let's get to the rest of them here. Eddie Jackson, limited again, questionable with a foot injury, We'll see. Sounds 50-50 on that one. Was never a full participant this week, but limited in all 3 practices. You've got Lucas Patrick. Here's an interesting one. He practiced today, but Matt Eberflus said he has 1 more step to clear in the concussion protocol. So I'm not really sure how that works. I guess like there's different steps, and once you get to a certain one, you can practice. Friday's more of a walkthrough anyway, so it's not like pads are on. But if he clears that final step, I would expect him to travel and be active. not travel because it's a home game, but be active against Minnesota. So whether or not he or Cody Whitehair would start, or if there's still some sort of rotation with Tevin Jenkins at left guard, that remains to be seen. But having him available would at least be nice to have that depth. Jalen Johnson going to play, Cole Kmet going to play, no injury designation there, so 2 key players good to go. It'll be nice to get Jalen back after missing the last couple of weeks with the hamstring injury. That gets us to Kyler Gordon and Doug Kramer. We'll get to Kramer in a minute. Obviously, Gordon, a key part of the secondary, that nickel position. He's been out since he broke his hand in week 1. He actually doesn't have a game designation listing, but he's still on IR. Matt Eberflus says he's in a good spot. He did practice in full on Friday, but he didn't commit to him returning off of IR this week. So that makes me think a couple of things. One, maybe the conditioning's not quite there and they don't want to use a roster spot this week with all the roster flux if he's only going to be able to rotate in. Or 2, maybe that hand's not all the way ready. Or 3, it's just Flus being Flus and they're going to activate him tomorrow before the deadline, which is Saturday at 4 o'clock. So we'll see. I'd like to get Gordon back out there, especially with Terrell Smith out with the illness. I know Gordon plays nickel and Smith plays outside, but it all works together, though, with the depth. Because if Gordon's back, you've got your week 1 starting corners. You've got Jalen Johnson, who's returning on the outside, Tyreek Stevenson on the other outside corner position, and then Gordon in the slot. And then you feel decent about Greg Stroman, who can play some snaps too, especially if Gordon is, still catching back up to speed coming off the injury. Stroman's played pretty good at nickel. So I hope Gordon's ready to go. I hope he's activated. For now, you have 1 open roster spot because you brought back Nathan Peterman, would get you to 54, but with the 2 players going on IR, you're back down to 52. So you've got 1 open roster spot. But that also gets to Doug Kramer. Do you give him a roster spot right now? Now remember, both Gordon and Kramer are in their 21-day window to be activated from IR. They do not have to be activated right now. The team has 3 weeks. I think if Lucas Patrick is good to go, Doug Kramer's fully healthy, by the way. Full participant all week. That thumb is fine. I think they're going to wait to make a decision on whether or not to bring him back or leave him on season-ending IR because we talked about this earlier in the week. Especially if Lucas Patrick's fine for this game, you've got Cody Whitehair, Lucas Patrick, and Dan Feeney, all who can play center. Doug Kramer can only play center. He cannot play guard. He's too small. So is there value right now in using a roster spot on Doug Kramer? I don't know that there is. So I do not expect him to be activated for this game. Maybe if Lucas Patrick doesn't clear that final step in concussion protocol, they activate him. But again, he's still probably your 3rd center, I would guess, for this game. I would guess Dan Feeney's ahead of him since he's been healthy at least. So maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. But that's just kind of how I view that situation. Now, circling back to Gordon, do you expect him to be activated and play against the Minnesota Vikings? Will he be active? Type Y for yes, or no, type A for active, or type I for inactive, or won't be activated. A for active, I for inactive. Kyler Gordon versus the Vikings on Sunday. Let me know down below. Okay, so let's talk about what some of these injuries mean for this game in particular. Well, I think the running back position is the key place to look at here because I mentioned it earlier with our first question for the audience. Deontay Foreman, Darrygton Evans, Khari Blasingame. That is kind of where things are sitting right now when it comes to the Chicago Bears running back depth chart. Now, give me just a second here. I want to double check and see the practice squad to see if Robert Burns is still there because he could be a game day elevation. Remember, practice squad players don't have to take up a 53-man roster spot and they can be activated. Robert Burns is still on the practice squad. That's what I thought. So I wonder if he's one of those Sunday elevations where you bring him up and he's activated because he's kind of like Khari Blasingame where he can play fullback and running back. Remember, Burns, the rookie undrafted free agent out of UConn, had a pretty good preseason. I can't remember if it was that final preseason game or the one against the Colts where he ran pretty well and had some nice runs. So he could give you some depth if you wanted to elevate him on game day as just kind of like an emergency option, if nothing else. Because remember, You lost 3 running backs in one game the other day. You're only going to carry 2 plus Blasingame, as it looks like right now, and one of those 2 is Darrygton Evans, who just came back. Now, he should know the offense. That shouldn't be a huge deal, but I think it's safe to say that they're going to lean heavily on D'Onta Foreman in this game. Now, that's the value in having D'Onta Foreman. You know, there was some chatter, well, does he even make sense on the roster? He's been a healthy scratch. Well, this is why you have him, right? I mean, you paid him $3 million. He rushed for over 900 yards last year with Carolina. He just found himself behind Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson. Well, now both are out, and you need D'Onta Foreman. So that's the luxury of depth there. But for this game, you obviously don't have a ton of depth. I would expect 80% D'Onta Foreman, 15% Darrygton Evans, you know, an occasional snap or 2 for Blasingame, probably just to pass protect. We know he can catch the ball fairly well, and if he has to take a carry, he can, but I don't think you want to game plan Kari Blasingame as a running back for several carries in this game. That's kind of emergency only, so that's kind of how I view that situation. Offensive line is going to be interesting too, especially if Lucas Patrick clears this final step. I would start Cody Whitehair. Now, look, the snap thing isn't great, but let's be honest. Lucas Patrick isn't a great snapper of the football either, so give me the guy who blocks better, and I thought Cody Whitehair looked better as a blocker at center than Lucas Patrick had. Now, I think he was playing at a serviceable level, especially the last couple weeks before he got a concussion the other night, but I would go from left to right for this game. Larry Borom at left tackle. Of course, Braxton Jones still on IR. Tevin Jenkins at left guard. Hopefully he's full go. I mean, you got to let him loose at this point. Cody Whitehair at center. Nate Davis at right guard. Darnell Wright at right tackle. And then as your backup options, if Lucas Patrick clears, you've got Lucas Patrick, Ja'Tyre Carter, Dan Feeney, and then if you want to have Aviante Collins active as a tackle, you can have him as your swing tackle. So that's what I would do. That would be my offensive line roster breakdown for this game against Minnesota. Critical game. I mean, we've talked about it all week. You know, when you start 0-4, typically you kind of think that, well, the season's pretty much over, but it's not if you win this game. I mean, you beat Washington on the road. Any road game you can get in this league is huge. If you can beat Minnesota at home, it's not always who you play, it's when you play them. You're catching Minnesota at a good time. They're 1-4. They're reeling. They lead the league in turnovers. Justin Jefferson is out. Now, it looks like they're going to be fully healthy other than him, but that's a major loss. We're talking about all these guys injured for the Bears. Jefferson is a much bigger injury in this game than probably all of the Bears' injuries combined, if we're being completely honest. So you're catching Minnesota at a time where they're shorthanded when it comes to their explosive offense. So if you can find a way to win this one and then play the Raiders at home next week, season could be back on. So hopefully the Bears find a way. Hopefully the game plan is sound, especially with what they plan to do at that running back position. One more thing, too, with Equanimeous St. Brown on IR, because I don't think we should overlook that one. Since he's been active and Claypool has been out of the picture the last 2 games, the offense has looked much better. We know he's a good blocker in the run game, physical presence out there. So I don't think we should just completely dismiss EQ getting ready to miss 4 games here. And just on top of that, you've got like no size at receiver now. DJ Moore and Velus Jones are your biggest receivers, and they're both listed at 6 foot. So I wonder if the Bears will scour for receivers. They did sign Roschon Johnson to the practice squad. We talked about that. Feel free to go check out that video. Could he be a game day elevation? I doubt it since he just got here, but just moving forward beyond this game, I'm curious. And for this game, does Tyler Scott or Velus Jones get more snaps? Because DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney are obviously going to play the bulk of the top 2 receiver snaps, and I do think the Bears are going to keep employing a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, which would obviously be DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney as your 2 primary receivers, and then Cole Kmet, Robert Tonyan as your tight ends, working Mercedes Lewis some, and then obviously the rest of it running back as well, D'Onta Foreman for the most part. But I hope we get to see some more Velus Jones in this game. I think he gives you a little more punch as a blocker than Tyler Scott at this point, and you can run more of that jet sweep action, which you obviously can with Scott as well. So if I'm Velus Jones, if I'm Tyler Scott, This feels like a big opportunity for me. Claypool's out of the picture. EQ's out for a month. It's go time, baby, especially Velus Jones. This is year 2, man. Like, you got to leave a mark here. So keep an eye on those two. All right, that's going to do it. A lot of injury stuff. Again, Khalil Herbert and Equanimeous St. Brown to IR. Nathan Peterman back on the active roster. That leaves you with one open roster spot. We'll see what they do between now and kickoff. Hopefully, Kyler Gordon is activated from injured reserve. Seems like he is fully healthy. My name is Harrison Graham. Predict the score. Bears, Vikings on Sunday. And subscribe to the channel. We'll be live for a watch party at 10:45 a.m. Central Time on Sunday.